All right, next demo. So in this demo, we're going to be looking at how you can use large language models within the experiment itself. So again, let's take a new example. Let's take a new common property resource. This time, we're going to talk about the building acts and regulations and then the building code of Australia. So we've grabbed all those documents, which are published federally as well as statewide. And then yep, building CPR and destruction. Again, I've loaded all my rules about what my different experimental situations are in terms of the IAD framework and how to run the EEG experiment, the economic experimental games. I've put in my acts and reg. I've put in volume 1 of the NCC, grabbed that. And also, I've actually loaded my previous PhD thesis chapters, which talks about this experiment and how to actually work through it step by step. So I've actually used that to help inform some of the prompts that I'll be talking about later about how to actually then sequence your experiment and then add in different agents. So and remember, the reason then why we've chose the acts and regs for the building acts and regs is because we can define it as a common property resource market type because it's difficult to, it's safety, right? A building safety is difficult to exclude. And it's highly subtractable. You know, once you start to take away safety from a building, it becomes a bad place, becomes derelict, these terms for it. So once we've loaded our documents here in the RAG, we can then move on to identifying the actors and situations. So I've talked about that, showed you in the last example. We can, do the analysis on the acts and regs, and it'll come out giving us the different acts and actors and action situations, so the rules they can do. And in this place, for building, we've got people like architects, engineers, builders, surveyors, inspectors, and regulators. So these are the regular sets of consultants and individual people who come along into this marketplace to decide the safety of the building fundamentally, right? As well as other things, cost, price. So there's other factors weighing. And the important thing is for each of these players, each of these agents, if you will, or actors or participants in the experiment, the architect, the engineer, builders, surveyors, we need to understand how these actors interact and make decisions that impact building safety, right? So the conversation is actually important because all the detail falls out in the way they feel about the thing. It might not just be cost, it might be quality, it might be time, these kinds of things. So the way we do this then, of course, is to do the analysis on the building acts and regs to identify those situations. And then we're able to pinpoint the action situation that those actors are playing within, the game they're actually playing in. And then we're able to figure out how safety is compromised inside of that situation. And I'll go into that in a little bit more, but I just want to show you how to set it up. And remember how important personal gain comes into CPR marketplaces, right? If we were to compare, the typical example of CPR marketplaces might be forests or water reservoirs and the actors and the players who control that. So it might be farmers, it might be fishers, so forth and so on, people who drink the water. So understanding that complex network, you can pick it apart and actually figure out, oh yeah, these common property resources like a forest will be depleted and destroyed, or water will be depleted and destroyed, or public safety, building safety, or taxpayer-funded research grants. All of those are things that go this way, right? If people come in, they will continue to take until there's nothing left. That's kind of our lesson around to the tragedy of the commons. So what we're really looking to do now is to be able to run an experiment and add in our participants. So the first step of any good experiment, and social science researchers do this better than most, it's almost part of all of our research in some way, shape, or form, is to conduct and transcribe interviews. So, and I'm not going to show this to everybody, but everybody obviously knows, about what you can do with things like Copilot and Microsoft Teams or with Google Chat, where it'll just transcribe as I'm talking, and then it'll actually write up meeting notes and actions based on the conversation. So we can utilize that transcription to be able to ask a series of questions. So one of the key things that we've done. Okay, so this shows obviously the end of my prompt that I put forward to create the question. So to kind of reverse engineer it, we went backwards and looked at what good prompt hacking would be. And this is a consideration. And then we came up with the questions, and then obviously I've asked the AI to group the questions. And then obviously we'll take these groups of questions, put them into a spreadsheet, create secondary questions, things like that, because we want it to be a human conversation and to walk the person through the things we need to know about them, to be able to generate a good profile on them, a good prompt template, as you might call it. So once we have these interview transcripts and we've transposed them into this set of questions, we'll then actually be able to turn this into a prompt template. And so a best way to demonstrate a prompt template. Let's do that real quick. Okay, so the best way to demonstrate what a prompt template is this. So in Google Pro, once you get advanced up to Google Advanced 1.5, what you can start to do is name your templates. And so let's try this one, right? So what I've done here is you have an EEG moderator, and let's have a look at the actual prompt template. So this is a prompt template. So what you do is you name your thing, and then you tell your agent, or your gem in this case, what its responsibilities are, what it should do, how it should operate as a moderator, the game rounds it should do, its outputs, how it should be triggered, so forth and so on. And then again, you can start to load all the documents, just like I did in this RAG. You can actually then start to build out agents that have RAGs built into them. So anytime they do anything, they'll operate towards this prompt template, these triggers, and it'll check against these documents as well. So in this types of things, what I can do is I can actually customize it and change it. And right now it's only 2 voices, but there's more advanced models you can use where you put in multiple voices. So we can then say, you'll put in a template prompt here as well, which defines the triggers and how each of the agents, be that the architect, the engineer, the builder, the surveyor, how they should actually participate. And so you'll then put in the actual instructions of the IAD framework and the rounds of actually being able to participate in the experiment. So all of a sudden, you'll very quickly get to a place where you're able to have these conversations and generate an actual experiment. And one of the key places I think this is going to be valuable is PhD students and early career researchers who are, like me, sitting in ethics, waiting for ethics approval. And at least I can run the experiments and generate these actual conversations just to get a feel for how the experiment will be, for if and when I'll ever get to do the experiment in person. Though at this stage, you'll obviously see that the virtual option's probably much more valuable. And in addition, I'll just quickly go over, obviously demonstrated the moderator one here, right? So this is a really good example of how to build out. So there's an EEG moderator. And so once we have each of the actors and participants, then we can add in the moderator, and the moderator will allow us to, we'll actually run the experiment with the building practitioners, right? So it'll actually walk them through the different positions, rules, control mechanisms, walk them through the different rounds, add in treatment effects, measure outcomes, and then provide these outputs. So I hope you're getting the idea. At the end of the day, the capability of being able to easily prototype an experiment, and I'm not saying this replaces the human, but it sure is. It's sure an amazing tool to allow us to just get on with the research rather than wait to be able to do this stuff. And last but not least, the key thing I'd highlight is you get enough compute behind this, and we can start to run massive sets of experiments multiple times over and over again, systematically changing the prompt hacking. So we can change the parameters, the actor configurations, also our interview strategies, how we collect data. So we can just in theory, we can run hundreds, even thousands of simulations and start to get a statistical idea for rules and treatment effects, which might help the group not reach a tragedy of the commons, might be Pareto optimal even, it would optimize the resource without destroying it. And this allows us to analyze the data, identify trends, see what scenarios lead to those optimal outcomes, where CPRs are sustainably managed, and don't lead to CPR tragedies of the commons where the resource is depleted. Okay, so hopefully that kind of gave you a whirlwind tour of what we're talking about when it comes to like prompt hacking and using RAGs with prompt hacking, because we kind of have these tools, right? So let's ask some questions of you now. Back over to Professor Nealon. Let's